The Soybean School on realagriculture.com is brought to you by Pride Seeds, Cruiser Max Vibrants, High Stick NT, and the Manitoba Pulse Growers. All right, so we are joined now here on Real Agriculture by Daryl Bestwitherick, the Program Manager for Quality Assurance and Reinspection here at the Canadian Grain Commission in downtown Winnipeg. And Daryl, we have some samples, soybean samples laid out in front of us here for this episode of the Soybean School. We've seen some quality issues, of course, across Western Canada this year, and seeing some quality issues now in Ontario as well. When it comes to soybeans, what do you look for downgrading factors, I guess, first of all?
I guess, yeah, for this year's crop, it's actually a very typical crop in that we're seeing the green immaturity is not dropping the grades out of a number 1 into a number 2, as well as some adhered soil is dropping it down to a number 2 as well. We're not seeing any major downgrades to lower than a number 2 for for damages this year, but they may be out there, and there may be some producers that are fighting with that.
So the difference between a number 1 and a number 2, most producers, at least in Western Canada, would be satisfied with the 2?
Yeah, you know what? In Western Canada, most producers are growing GM soybeans, and they're growing them for oil crush market. And the number 1 soybean grade is a very premium market intended for the food market. It's got very little amounts of adhered soil and very low and infrequent amount of immaturity in there. And the number 2 grade is quite large. So for the amount of soil you can have, we actually have a photo print that is available to licensed companies to use as grading, and so it represents how much soil can be allowed in a number 2, and then so we have that tool to help us grade that.
Earth tag would be one of the more common downgrading factors.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's with the crush market. It's the producers are growing soybeans, so they're trying to shoot for that number 2 market, and the earth tag that's allowed in there is quite a bit, and it's not uncommon to see earth tag on the soybeans just because they're growing so low to the ground that the combine's just scraping the ground to pick up all the pods. So earth tag is very common.
Green seed would also be at the top of the list in terms of occurrence?
Yes, immaturity. It's always seems to kind of be there at some amount. But when you're going again for the crush market, you can have some immaturity in the seeds. I think with the important thing there with immaturity is it's if you have green seeds, the thing is you got to cut them to determine if there's any damage to the cotyledon. If the green has started to penetrate the cotyledon at all, then it becomes damage. Otherwise, you can have, there's no limit to the amount of green hulls you can have in a number 2 grade.
And that's something we saw, was it 2 years ago?
It was implemented 2 years ago, yeah. Okay. We did the research. We did a survey with soybean crushers and plants, and in most cases, sometimes the hull is even removed, and it has no impact on the end product.
How about mold showing up in a sample? Is that something that you see?
It can. We have one mold is called downy mildew that can show up. Downy mildew, it has to cover more than 50% of the kernel in order to be considered as damage. And so we have tolerances of 2% in number 1, 3% in number 2, 5% in number 3. So it would fit into that overall damage tolerance.
We've seen frosts hit some soybean fields early this year. Are you seeing some frost in samples?
We are not seeing the frost yet in the samples that we've seen in our harvest sample program, but Manitoba and Saskatchewan, where we're growing soybeans in untraditional soybean acres, soybeans are getting shorter growing seasons now, so that it is more. It makes it a bit easier for producers to grow good quality soybeans now in Western Canada, but our shorter growing season still affects some crops. And so, again, we're not seeing that, but but it could possibly be showing up for some producers. Again, to determine that, you're going to see green seeds. You're going to be cutting the kernels to determine whether the cotyledon is green, and then it should have a waxy appearance to it as well to determine if it is frost damage.
What about purple seed stain? Is that something that you see in samples coming into the CGC?
We don't see a lot of it in Western Canada. It's typically more from an Eastern Canada point of view. We do have purple mottling, where we do actually have a print as well that represents the amount of purple mottling that's allowed in a sample. It is contained to the hull again, but it does give a very distinct purple color to the seed. But again, it really is a Ontario grading factor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Continuing down the list then of grading factors for soybeans, insect damage, is that something that you see?
We do see from time to time. It can affect it. Usually the insect, to be considered as insect damage, the insect will penetrate the seed. You'll see a hole, and typically around that hole you will see some discoloration. Again, you want to cut that kernel. See if that discoloration is penetrated into the cotyledon at all. If it has, then we would assess as damage, and again, goes into those overall damage tolerances.
Okay. Soybean mosaic virus, is that anything that's come through the lab here?
We do see that once in a while, but not very often. It's not very prevalent at all.
And then finally here, from Opsys, is that showing up as well?
We have seen some with Opsys. Opsys is a sketching that happens on the exterior of the kernel. It doesn't downgrade it just for the etching. If there is some kind of mold or something associated with it, then that would be considered as damage, but the etching itself does not cause any downgrading.
All right. I think we're going to shift over to assessing dockage then here. Daryl, maybe take us through the process of looking at dockage in a soybean sample.
Certainly. Dockage is done using an 8 round hole sieve. So you have the sieve with an 8 millimeter round hole, and so we would use a sample that is 1 kilogram in size. We would then put about 250 grams, which this is about 250, on top of the sieves at one time, and we would shake it back and forth 30 times. Once we have done that, we would actually we would have our material that goes through, which is light aspiration material that would be considered dockage. All right. We can also use a Carter Dockage machine to throw the remainder of this sample over to assist us in removing all of the other lightweight material that was too big to go through the 8 round hole sieve. Without that, you can hand pick all the material that you get, and so not taking any soybeans, but just the large material is all considered as dockage. And then, so if you had your Carter Dockage machine, you would use whatever came out in the aspiration plus your hand pick, and you would add all of that together to consider as what is dockage. You can also have earth pellets as well in the seeds or in the sample, and that would be, you could hand pick those up to 10% and be considered as dockage.
Well, thanks for giving us an idea of what to look for in our soybeans, Daryl.
Oh, you're very welcome.